for another edition of the Joe Sixpack Racing Podcast. I usually say special edition, but they're all special editions. There's a lot. All my guests are special guests. Today is October 17th. We're a little early today. Normally we do these on Wednesday at 8 p.m. live, but heck, it's a podcast. It's going to stay out there forever, so we can do them anytime. And my guest today is across the pond over in London, and we're going to be talking about simstaff.net. It's a service provider for esports, kind of like Indeed is for finding jobs and talent agencies. This is for esports, and our guest is involved in my favorite part of esports, racing online. So we're going to be talking about that. What else is going on? Coming up later this afternoon on Wainwright Broadcasting on FM and Anchor FM and Spotify, we have a new podcast coming up this afternoon, Curmudgeon Radio. Motto is, let's set them straight, and we go after everybody. Anything that's biting your bonnet or a bee in your bickers, in your knickers. We'll talk about it, and we'll set them straight. There's a lot going on there. Also, I want to remind you, our other two podcasts on Wainwright Broadcasting are the Indoor Gardener podcast, which another edition coming up this week. Everything about indoor gardening, houseplants, growing seeds, lighting, fertilizers, everything you need to make your room an indoor jungle. And of course, the original podcast, this one right here, the Joe Sixpack Racing Podcast, which we are doing now. And soon after, we'll upload this to YouTube where it stays forever. And then we extract the audio and put that up on Anchor FM, Spotify. It's out there on Amazon, Apple, Microsoft Pocket, pretty much all the major podcast studios. So if you want to listen to any one of the podcasts, just Google Joe Sixpack Racing Podcast, the Indoor Gardener Podcast, and soon Curmudgeon Radio. Well, let's get back to sim racing. As in the U.S. here, it's fall and summer leagues are ending, or a lot of leagues taking some time off, and I'd like to introduce to you my guest today from London, England, across the pond, as we say, Josh Martin. Josh Martin, he's with a company called SimStaff, and he's going to tell us all about that and the world of esports. Josh, how you doing this evening?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's just about 7 p.m. over there?
Yeah, it is indeed. Yeah, it's 7 p.m. It's not too rainy at the moment for the UK, so I can't complain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all going well, man. All going well.
Okay, so we're over here on East Coast time in the U.S. Is the rest of is the next 5 hours safe enough to continue with this day, or should we just unplug things and go hide?
Well, you know what the UK is like. We usually have about 4 different seasons within a day. So, yeah, fingers crossed it isn't too bad, and maybe you can lend us some of your sunshine over this way.
Well, we had nice sunshine yesterday, but today's 49 degrees Fahrenheit and rainy, and we do the 4 seasons right about now and then again in the spring. It was funny. I was doing a podcast once on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, and it was already tomorrow in Australia, and I asked the guy down there, and I said he did sim racing officiating, and I said, "How's the new year going down here? Is it safe, or should we just stay where we are?" And he's just joking around. He goes, "You better stay where you are. It's a rough ride." So
nice.
You've been working in the esports industry for about 5 years, according to the bio you sent me.
Yeah, that's about right. So just kind of give you a bit of an overview and
Sure.
the listeners as well. So I started sim racing about 5 years ago. So I was kind of just doing a little bit of league racing on a Assetto Corsa. I have been sponsored by Thrustmaster during that time. So a lot of different like online leagues and kind of as you do, you kind of dabble in different types of sim racing, whether it's track stuff, open wheel, drifting, you name it.
Got it.
Then kind of looked to graduate university, like realized I need a real job. So tried to find a mix of sim racing and a real career. And then I joined a company called the Events House. So they are like a live event service provider within Formula One and various motorsport related activations. So did that for a while, and then COVID happened. So got off to a great start. And then during the COVID period, I was fortunate enough to work with David Perel, helping launch SimGrid and coach Dave Academies. And then, launched SimStaff about a year ago since now.
Okay. What's intriguing is when you said how long have you been racing online?
Oh man, it's a good question. I've probably been racing online for probably about 6 years. Yeah,
And
about 6 years, I'd say.
and what did you do, or how good were you that you were able to get not one but two different sponsors? Because I find, like any other entertainment, getting somebody to sponsor you is very difficult. How did you manage to get not one but two major names in online racing to sponsor you?
Yeah, it's tricky, man, for sure. I mean, I was really lucky. I sent an email out to Fanatec, Frostmaster, and Logitech all at the same time. And Frostmaster came back to me first. Eventually, Fanatec and Logitech came back and said, "Yeah, not just now." But Frostmaster were open to the idea. And I think sim racing was, as I'm sure you know, like really quite young,
Yeah.
particularly kind of pre-COVID. So
Yep.
it was just a case of kind of doing something a little bit different and saying, how can we promote your products? What can we do to generate more sales? And then once you've got one on board, I do find it is easier. So when I went to Play Seats, I had the backing of Frostmaster at that point, and it kind of adds a bit of a sort of credibility. So again, there it was kind of just doing a new spin on content and pushing stuff on TikTok and social media and that kind of stuff as well.
So like any sponsorship deal, it's not just they provide you with goods and a logo; it's a partnership, and you got to work on it through other platforms as well. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know yourself, right? Even with this podcast,
Yeah.
You need to be delivering some form of tangible products,
Right.
whether that is photos or videos or reviews. Because ultimately, there's 101 sim racing leagues. There's probably a million and one sim
Yeah.
racing drivers,
Yeah.
and it's about how you can provide something unique that these guys don't just chuck $50, $100 on a Facebook ad. They can
Sure.
actually spend it with you, invest in intangible content that they can repurpose 5, 10, 15 times, and then really just from that relationship. And if you've got a good track record, then they're happy and you're happy, right?
Yeah. No, that's great. What else is it going to? Oh, being that you mentioned TikTok and a lot, probably Facebook and Instagram, etc., like that, and Twitter. Did you have any quote unquote broadcast experience before with social media, such as social media marketing, or any on screen in front of camera experience?
Yeah, so I studied psychology at university. So,
Oh, okay.
obviously, kind of if you look at marketing and sales and kind of dial it right back to
Yeah.
level one, is sort of all about sort of human behavior and, like the laws of attraction, reciprocation, and all that
Yep.
kind of stuff. But in terms of like formal sort of training, not really. I obviously watched, like what the guys were doing on iRacing, and at the time, I guess I had a course of one, and seeing like teams like Team Redline and whatnot, these guys at the
Yeah.
top of their level, and what they were doing that wasn't just like a sticker on a livery. They were producing some really cool content. They were doing
Yep.
fun activations and competitions, and from there you kind of just you learn it and you absorb it and obviously tweak it to make it more relevant to yourself and your audience.
Cool.
But then over time it starts to build momentum and you find out what works and what doesn't, right?
Exactly. That's why I've probably think like five different platforms I try to promote the racing. And also I'm a photographer on the side and a garden designer, so trying to do all that can be a little daunting at once. You talked about SimGrid. What was SimGrid? And then tell me about Coach Dave Academy. What did they provide for esports?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, I don't know what things were like in the US, but in the UK, we had a bit of a hard time with COVID in the sense that, we were kind of in and out of lockdowns.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really making a lot of sense what was going on at the time. So
Right.
for a lot of people, obviously, real racing had closed, F1 had stopped, and all this kind of stuff. So, people buy sim rigs, they want to go sim racing. And the first problem is, well, where do you find a league? Because unless you have a friend of a friend or a link to a Discord server, it's really difficult to get started. So, David Perel, who's obviously a really successful GT racer in real life, he had the idea about kind of creating kind of like this front page, I guess, of sim racing. So the idea that you can find a night, you can find a game, you can find a region, and you can go racing. So we set about there, kind of cultivating a community. When I left just over the summer there, it was about 30,000 members.
Wow.
And really just provided like this central hub where, you, me, or anyone could go and not only take part in competitions, but also host them and, just have a good time and kind of find that social circle that the sim racing is all about, right?
Wow, excellent. And what were the more popular platforms on SimGrid?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, ACC, Set Across Competizione,
Yep.
obviously, that was a relatively new title at the time. It was starting to kind of build a bit of momentum. They had new DLC coming out. They have the US content that's fairly recently came out.
Mm-hmm.
And then iRacing was the next game to the platform, still on there, obviously. And, iRacing was hugely popular. But it's been really interesting to kind of see the difference in behaviors between the people who do like oval racing versus road racing, right? Like,
Right. Yep.
and even just culturally, between North America and Europe and Asia,
Oh,
it's
it's
so
huge.
different. It's really like a mixing pot.
Yeah. Yeah. If either I I love road racing. I really
Mm,
suck at it. My I rating is like 750, but I absolutely love doing it. It's a lot of fun. Mainly one of the reasons I love it so much is because Lime Rock Park is about an hour from
nice.
my house, and I get a chance to work over there on their big weekends. And you say, how many people could say they had lunch with Skip Barber, and guys like that. And they just got new ownership. Skip Barber, he's in his mid 80s. He's still
Mm,
the primary owner, but they brought in 28 investors that were car guys. Parker
wow.
Parker Kligerman from NASCAR's part owner. Roger Penske's on the board of directors. Who else they got in there? And what they started, because Skip realized, he's getting old and it's getting harder to work every day as it gets harder for work. For me, it's 60. I'm retired, so I don't really have to work that hard. Um, and he had a couple other people interested, but they weren't car people. They couldn't promise him that it would stay a racetrack. They were talking golf courses and condos. And the
Oh
layout of
wow.
the layout of Lime Rock Park would make a gorgeous 18 hole, but he said no. So he's got car guys there now. They're dumping a lot of money into the place. They're working with OEM manufacturers, Mercedes, Porsche, Mercedes dealers, Porsche dealers, Maserati dealers, and manufacturers. All the big names, they're getting involved. So, and it's going to stay a racetrack from here on out. So that's a lot of fun. But yeah, the difference. Anybody else is they either love oval or love uh, road courses. There's not a lot of crossover. And then the dirt guys, they're just playing dirt. They don't care. They don't want they don't want to race asphalt.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I was quite naive when I first went into the oval stuff. I thought, well, like, being a typical European, it's just turning left, right? And then I started doing, because I really wanted to
Yeah.
do the Indy 500 on iRacing.
Oh,
So
okay. Yep.
kind of started in rookies and worked my way up. And
Yeah.
like, there's some proper strategy when you're like literally racing door to door, bumper to bumper with like five,
Yes.
10 guys around you. Like,
Yeah.
the intensity is insane, right?
Right. Yeah. What I found is when most of the time when you're on a road track, you're racing yourself. Because
Mm,
it's your skill. Because of course, unlike oval, I said the road courses, you win it and lose it in the turns, according to how you hit the apexes and your braking and all that. And there's a list, let's face it, it's obvious. There's a lot more braking and apexes in a road course than there is oval. And what I find with oval is you're not so much racing the track, you're racing other drivers. So, like I
yeah.
said, road course, you're racing yourself and the track, and oval, you can have people on both sides of it, which you don't see too often on road courses. So, what was Coach Dave Academy all about?
Yeah, so Coach Dave Academy was kind of the kind of the second product that David had launched,
Mm-hmm.
and there I was kind of helping again with the marketing and brand advertising. But Coach Dave Academy really provides a couple of key services. The first one being sim racing coaching, so you can book
Oh, okay.
sessions to review how you're driving a lap, how to improve your braking, your overtaking,
Oh, that's
anything that you
cool.
kind of want to get worked on.
Yeah,
You can have a combination of really high level sim racers or real racing drivers kind of look at you and even teach the fundamentals if that's what you need.
well, that's
And then
cool.
the other side of it is like setups. So they provide you setups for any car and combination really on
Mm-hmm.
ACC. They're doing some really cool stuff with iRacing at the moment, and really just kind of, if you think about, someone would go to SimGrid, for example, to try and find somewhere to race.
Right.
They kind of find their feet, maybe doing some smaller like GT series stuff.
Yep.
But then buy like a setup, they get some coaching, then they might take the next step up in their league, and you kind of build that ecosystem of like being kind of all encompassing, like you're kind of saying there, right? When you bring
Yeah.
together a group of car guys, the environment that you build is one where car guys also want to come, and it's exactly the
Sure.
same idea with SimGrid and Coach Dave Academy.
Very good. How did the sessions work? Did you like record a race and then they would critique it, or was it actually live coaching while you're driving, or did they watch you drive and then critique afterwards? How would a session go? Let's say I would say I'm a beginner. I'm gonna race at pick a track, Lime Rock. I've never been on it. It's a Mazda Miata, and I want to learn how to drive. How would Coach Dave work with me, brand new?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, great choice of car and track combo. I highly praise that, sir.
Yep.
But yeah, there's kind of two sort of routes you could go down. So the first one is, you could record some laps, some sessions, try and get as much data on there of like your pedal inputs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can send that over to Coach Dave Academy. One of their coaches will analyze it. They'll send you back analysis, via voice chat or email.
Cool.
And then the second route is probably more kind of what you'd expect from a coaching service. So you get, a 60-minute one-on-one private session. You focus on, driving technique. You get to fix fundamentals.
Oh, wow.
And you can kind of pick when you want to be coached, which is quite nice as well.
That's cool. So let's say turn one at Lime Rock or any park, I didn't take it right. How would he show me on video or however to correct? Would he show the right way to do it, or would he show where my car was and then put a ghost car over it where it should be?
Yeah, I think you've touched upon something really crucial there, which is like, it's not a case of looking at your video and saying, oh, you should have braked at this pixel or brake 5 meters later or whatever. It's more right. Like the fundamentals, like you kind of just alluded to. So kind of explaining why you should be, having that initial heavy impact on braking and then trailing it off, or, that kind of stuff. So less, I guess placement of a car is obviously a part of that, but more so, teaching you the fundamentals and the sort of the theory of driving, rather than like put your car here, turn at this point, press this button, press this button. That makes sense.
So it's more organic than just do this, do that with like a mark on the screen.
Nice. Yeah, organic's a good word. Yeah, definitely,
cool.
Definitely.
So as you get used to it and you become, let's say, a good driver where you don't need an introduction to Lime Rock, what's the next step to get to being an excellent driver, winning at Lime Rock, as opposed to just driving there?
Oh man, you know yourself, some online lobbies, it's just a roll of the dice what happens at turn one. But you can get, some warm-up laps and like instructor laps, kind of like you would at a real track day, where the guys at Coach Dave Academy, they'll show you around the track and discuss, more about the specific kind of techniques and behaviors that you're using. And, if you've got any questions about racecraft and that kind of stuff, they can help address those. And I guess ultimately, the long-term goal is that you get to a point where you don't really need coaching as such, because really what's happening is you're learning the fundamentals, you're getting experience by yourself, kind of practicing how to overtake and brake and stuff. And then ultimately you can just go racing and, hopefully not have to go coaching again unless you want to, specifically work on something in particular.
There you go. I don't know if you've seen the guy on some of the iRacing Facebook groups. He's a psychological life coach type of thing, and he's tailored a whole program to sim racing.
Wow.
How do you think the mental preparedness to race is versus just jumping in the car and taking off? And let's say it's you guys, it's something one of your big races you're doing, and what's the mental challenge or the mental preparedness to get ready for a $10,000 prize versus just hopping in on a Sunday afternoon on iRacing?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, when I was doing like my own sim racing and stuff like that, competing in SRO esports and Ferrari esports and stuff, it's so much more. You almost find it's a bit weird. People kind of describe, or the pro guys describe sim racing as a job, and I never really understood what that meant until kind of I was taking part in these competitions. And you build a schedule of like, okay, I'm going to go in the rig today, and I'm going to be working on improving my braking, braking slightly later if I can, or being a bit more fuel efficient, that kind of stuff. And you almost have like lessons and structure.
Unknown caller.
Oop, you still there? Hello? What the heck? Hello? Josh, you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sorry about this. Somehow my stupid phone rang. And that and somehow, even though I've got Bluetooth off, it somehow picked up with my portable speaker here, which for some reason picked up Bluetooth even when it's hardwired to the iPad. Sorry about that.
All good, man. All good. The joys of getting calling listeners from the sounds of things.
Yeah, and the joys of why I don't do this professionally for a living, because this would happen all the time.
All good, man.
While we're broadcasting the F1 Championship in Monaco, or wherever they have it, So, let me see here. The 2021 Ferrari Esports Series, you finished seventh. That sounds like that's a pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure. So it was on a set of Corsa One, which is
Uh-huh.
a game that I've kind of spent since day one competing in, and it started off in the format of there's like hot lap qualifying
Right.
sessions, then you got knockout races, and then you've got like this main championship in which it works just like a normal racing league. You have to score the best points.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because there were like two groups of 20 drivers, so there was like Group A and Group B.
Gotcha.
And over the course of your independent championships, you then have the top 10 drivers from each come to like a super finale.
Okay.
So something a little bit different, and for me was really quite quite an accomplishment. Obviously, it was a popular series, and racing at a level like that where you're literally fighting for attempts in qualifying
Oh,
is
wow.
unlike anything else.
That's cool. And was that broadcast on any major network or streaming?
Yeah, so Ferrari pushed that through their own, like the Ferrari main YouTube channel, which was really cool. They also
Oh,
did some
wow.
stuff on Twitch with it, which, yeah, it was just really exciting. And for me, it was kind of one of the main reasons I first got into sim racing, like being
Cool.
able to fight with
Yeah.
people who are so closely leveled out in terms of
Right.
talent and car setups and this kind of stuff. And just really encouraging you to get into that rhythm of hitting your braking points, going for an overtake, but the racing's clean but hard but fair, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All makes perfect sense. And how many races were in the series?
Oh man, I need to double check. I don't have it to hand, but I want to say that I did. I think it ended up being like 7 or 8 races all in.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
which was quite a good volume of races when you're literally having to practice near enough every day to make sure that you're on pace. You can't really afford to take days off in that regard.
True. And were they full length races or shortened versions of actual races?
Yeah, shortened versions.
Okay.
Most of them were kind of time limited, so every race
Yep.
was about 30-minute sprint race. So really,
Okay.
even there, right? I don't know about you, but I kind of prefer those types of races because it's like you have to be on it from minute one, and you push right
Yes.
until the checkered flag.
Yeah. I do like timed races. I don't know how they would work on oval. Probably wouldn't be too much of a difference, but yes, when you're on the road courses, they just seem to be perfect fit for timed races. So yeah, I do prefer timed races, definitely,
Mm.
especially on iRacing, because you know how long it takes if you decide to throw full course yellows on a place like Watkins Glen. You're talking 8 minutes a caution lap if you're using the boot. So that's that's why I prefer timed races. It's another one. Watkins Glen is on. It's probably about 4 hours from us. We go up there for the NASCAR weekend every summer and
Oh, amazing.
camp up there. So it's a lot of fun. We get the pit passes and the whole 9 yards stuff like that. And my uh, like I said earlier, I'm a photographer as well, and my son took up photography, and he now takes photographs for NASCAR, IMSA, New England Motorcycle Road Racing, and then just picked up one of our local Sports Car Clubs of America chapters to do their um, social media management and photographing. So I'm like happy for him on one part, and on the other part is like, dang, what did I miss? How come he got the job? So
No, that's awesome, man.
yeah,
And I think that's the big thing, right? Is with real motorsport, you have that kind of you can have those sort of family ensemble moments where you're all going up
yes,
together and having this great experience. And I think sim racing maybe isn't there yet. I think over COVID, I certainly like with my family, for example, it gave my dad an opportunity to kind of understand what I'm doing and what I'm
hmm
taking part in. And when you have people like Jensen Button and Charles Leclerc doing sim races, it kind
yeah,
of helps frame stuff for them. So
yeah.
so
So
really, my hope is that sim racing does eventually get to the kind of situations that you've described there, which is
yeah,
you have families, be that mother and daughter, father and son, or whatever, taking part in the same iRacing race or
yeah.
ACC or whatever the case may be.
No, that's cool. Were you worried that he was just thinking you were playing video games after psychology in college?
Yeah, pretty much. But to be fair, I can't blame him, right? Because sim racing
Yeah.
is, I mean, firsthand from what you've been doing with your racing in this podcast. Like,
hmm
you go back 5 years, sim racing was a completely different position to even where it was
Yeah.
pre-COVID. Then you have this kind of COVID bubble, and now as we're coming out the other side, it's just a completely different ball game again. So I completely
Yeah.
understand why people maybe have reservations or misunderstandings, and
Yeah.
and hopefully we're seeing some cool stuff come forward that helps frame it for them.
Well, a couple of our local universities here actually have esports programs now. Not
Oh
only
wow.
and esports teams competing on collegiate and NCAA levels like that, or regionally, etc. And
Hmm.
I believe one of them is also doing esports marketing, which brings us to your company, SimStaff. when I saw the name SimStaff, I was like, wow. I got an idea what it is, but go into it and tell me why you started it and what's the object behind SimStaff. What's your goal in your marketing?
Yeah, for sure. So SimStaff was launched about a year ago, and basically, as I kind of alluded to earlier in the discussion, when COVID kind of hit, a lot of brands looked to sim racing as an opportunity to still engage with their fans
Mm-hmm.
and their customers, but didn't really know much about the space, what it was, how to get involved. So, I was quite fortunate. I was in a position where I had some relatively strong contacts at people like Gfinity and like I alluded to, Events House and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so SimStaff was really born. If you go to our services page on simstaff.net, you can see there's a slogan. It's a little bit cheesy, but it says take the guesswork out of sim racing. And for me, that was kind of the big crucial thing, because so many people look at sim racing and don't know how to interact with it, not for any ignorance as such, but it is really important to kind of provide that guiding hand. So essentially what we do is we provide broadcasting services, stewarding services, event operation services for both, virtual leagues, but also if you want to run simulators or events, we can do that as well. And really, by having people who are passionate about sim racing, their knowledge of products is so much higher than people learning it. That means less downtime, which means more time for brands to engage with customers. So really just kind of helping to explore, exposing sim racing to a wider audience and also making it a career venture for people as well. I think if you'd asked anyone, pre-COVID, can you get a job in sim racing? The answer would probably be no. Whereas now we're at least starting to pave that way and give these guys exposure to brands and companies and opportunities within sim racing.
So it looks like you're pretty vertically integrated there. I see on your technical support, you do builds and purchase guidance as well as installations. Tell me about that end of it.
Yeah, for sure. So, if you type in like sim racing rig, because you're someone who wants to buy one, like it's such a maze, right? You get hit with all these different brands, all these different price points.
Yeah.
Do you want direct drive versus belt driven, formula versus GT? Just it's too many questions, right? And for the average person, or anybody really, the ability to have someone to kind of turn to and say, hey, what's your thought on this versus this? Or hey, my budget is X, can you help me spec something out? It's something that, for me, and I'm sure you've probably seen it the same way. If you buy a car, you get an opportunity to test drive it. The salesman, he's trying to sell you a car, but he will give you different options, know. And so my thinking is, if you're making such a big purchase like a sim, $4,000 or $5,000, why isn't someone helping guide your hand to tell you what you can be doing and get it set up correctly? So that's really where the sort of the technical support comes in there.
Got it. And so do you also build them too?
Yeah, exactly. So if you order a whole bunch of kit, we can have a technician on site at your house to help build it, or we can provide you support over Zoom. So, we can be there to literally help you from the moment you click buy to the moment you jump in and turn your first lap.
And ticket support systems, what's that all about?
Yeah, so that's more for sort of corporate activations. So when we're working with, be that motorsport teams or electronic brands or whatever the case is, sometimes maybe you've seen it yourself. You go to, even a racetrack or a convention or whatever, there'll be a simulator there. We can provide technical support to those guys using tickets rather than having a staff member on site if it's, easier for them.
Oh, got it. So similar to a work order.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. And on your broadcasting, again, it looks like it's pretty vertical, from back of house operations to talent and everything. So marshaling, that's the thing I was like. So you will also have, let's say I have a league and I got some guy who's my normal marshal couldn't make it. Do you provide a rig? Could I just get a hold of sim staff and say, hey, I need a marshal for Sunday afternoon, 3:00 Eastern time. Here's our rules. Can you do it?
Yeah, that is exactly it. So we've got a team probably now of about upwards of 70 freelancers available. Some of them based in Asia, some of them based in North America. The broadcasting was in particular, we worked with Samantha Tam Racing, who are obviously based kind of in your part of the world. And for them, it was like they don't want to do the typical league broadcast from TV style cameras. It's like let's change stuff up, make it a bit different so people watch it more so they can sell sponsorship space. So we kind of by having people who are so passionate about sim racing, we can kind of, be that one step ahead of where the market's heading and give our customers the best service possible.
So it sounds like in your other areas as well, you have a lot of freelancers based all around the globe.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we did an activation for Gfinity. We sent out a team of 6 people to Abu Dhabi in the summer to help them run an on-site activation.
Oh
We're
wow.
involved with the Formula One esports series with stewarding.
Yep.
Really, just kind of my goal obviously is running the business is like wherever people are looking to do sim racing activations, think sim stuff. So hopefully we're getting there.
Okay. And you said you're not um, your bread and butter, or it's not your mainstay, is doing league races. So it's more the larger races where there's a lot more money, a lot more sponsorships involved. Is that how you do it?
Yeah, I think that's a fair analysis. I mean, obviously, league racing is so
Excuse
important
me.
to sim
Mm-hmm.
racing, and it's where we all start. And
Yeah.
I would love to be in a position where maybe in 5 years' time, the average person can set up a sim racing league. They can broadcast it. They can
Yeah.
have sponsors and make a full time career out of even hosting races. I
Yeah.
think that'd be really cool. But obviously, for now, a lot
Excuse
of it
me.
is kind of geared towards the higher profile, and
Sure.
I guess the brands that have got deeper pockets and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because we've done have ran probably 2 or 3 different leagues under the Joe Sixpack Racing name, and you're lucky if you were a broadcaster, you could get $40 for a race, and everybody
Mm.
complained, "Oh, that's expensive. That's a lot of money," and I'm like, not really. You're asking some dude to give
Yeah,
up his
I think
Sunday
it's fair because
afternoon.
obviously you're not just like hitting start and stop on the broadcast. You're setting
Yeah,
up all the graphics beforehand. You're reading about the drivers and the liveries to get those
right.
teed up right. And
Yeah,
yeah, no, I completely get it, man. It's a difficult space to be in. That's for
yep.
sure.
And in a lot of them, they have a few sponsors, but they're not. I don't know what the broadcaster is making off of it, but his $40. But if you're getting, maybe you're lucky if it's another 100 or 200 in sponsorships for that, and that's real lucky for your average iRacing league. You've got to be real top notch to get that much money. So it's more like doing it for the love of instead of the profit for sure in most cases.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing though either, and I
Yeah.
think there's always going to be a demand for that kind of
Oh
product.
sure.
The big thing I would say is, having had the fortune of kind of seeing sim racing grow over time, is that
Yep.
people shouldn't forget that your average sim racer is like the perfect cross section between someone who likes technology, motorsport, and gaming. So,
That's a good
if you've
point.
got a league that's got 100 drivers, that's 100 potential customers to somebody, and don't sell
Right.
yourself short.
Now
For sure.
is that transpire over to other esports too, like tank battles? I can't imagine 100 guys in a tank battle simulator world championship actually go out and drive tanks on the weekend.
No, for sure. I mean, at the moment, we really want to kind of capture that vertical
Yeah.
of sim racing and making sure that we're kind of covering our bases there.
Yeah.
And I think over time, well, I mean, not even over time. If you look at like Fortnite or Call of Duty, the
Oh,
budgets and
sure.
what they're doing there is insane.
Yeah.
And hopefully, sim racing can get there. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know what your opinion is, but I definitely think we've seen sim racing obviously kind of boom since COVID, right?
Oh, definitely. Like we were talking before we went on the air, or maybe we even said it here. The uh, COVID with I think it was one of the eNASCAR eCoke series. One of them was watching it on Thursday night, and it was so funny because you got the broadcasters in the booth, right? The NASCAR broadcasters, because they were broadcasting these races when you couldn't have the real racing going on, and they're showing the webcam and the drivers, and this one kid, he's 17 years old, he's racing in his bedroom. You can see the dog going by and his parents coming by, and they all come running in when he won $40,000. And it's just like, it's kind of cool, but it's like, wow, this is different, because there's a guy racing in his bedroom and there's his cat on his pillow type of thing, and it was really cool. And some of these guys, their setups were $10,000-$12,000 setups, and one of the guys that won, I don't know, some $10,000 prize, literally was doing it on his desk in his bedroom on a screen and just a regular desk chair, not even a real rig. So it was kind of cool watching it.
Yeah, for sure. I think you've touched on a key point there, which is like whether you're spending $500-$600 on just a racing wheel which you clamp onto your desk, or you're spending $5,000 or $6,000 building a full setup. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, my biggest frustration is that like the manufacturers, they have customer support, but it ends like the moment until you have a problem, they don't really support you, and that's really where we
Exactly.
kind of want to fill the gap. Is like rather than have to post on Facebook, why is this broken? You can go to
Yeah.
simstaff.net and book time with a technician and get some help and support, and really, get back out there turning laps, right? Because that's what we all want to be doing.
Exactly. Well, let's go back a little bit to the race training. Everybody. There's a certain point where the Air Jordans make you a better basketball player. At what point in sim racing does better equipment actually make you a better driver?
I mean, what's your opinion? What do you think? What's your opinion?
Boy, you would ask that, wouldn't you? I would think you would know. I think a lot of that would have to do. It's got to be some raw natural talent there, and it gets to a point where you realize you've outgrowing your equipment. Would be my point. If you're a serious driver and someone sees something in you, the passion, the energy, you can probably train anybody to be a very good driver, but not everybody can be trained to be a champion. So I would say when you're outgrowing your equipment and you're at a level where you're also increasing in competition, where you're no longer winning, even though you're still driving well, that to me would be the point where you need better goods or better pair of sneakers.
Yeah, I would say that that's a pretty fair analysis. I
Okay.
think it's the same with like buying car setups. People will
Yeah.
say, "Oh, have you got a setup you can share to make me quicker?"
Hmm.
But the reality is, if you've got 1 to 2 seconds to find in how you're braking, a setup isn't going to solve that. But once you've worked out how to improve your braking and you're looking for those
Got it.
last 2 or 3 attempts, then 100% a setup's of value.
Yeah.
I know guys, and I'm sure you know them as well, who are racing on, launch their G29s or whatever and driving very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And then you got guys who are spending like $2,000 or $3,000 on a wheelbase and, they're not slow, but they're definitely not as quick as, the kit doesn't compensate for that. So I think you're
Exactly.
100% on with that analysis.
Mhm.
And, the racing wheel I've used from Thrustmaster, the TSPC, I've been using that for the past 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
And, okay, Thrustmaster in some people's eyes doesn't have the same level of quality as Fanatec or Hoising Belt or whatever. But,
Hmm.
if you've got that talent and, or more just the time to, work on your technique, then you're going to do much better than the guy who jumps in with super expensive equipment.
Got it. I've had the Logitech G29 or G29 293 or whatever it is. I've replaced the wheel a couple times. And for what I do, I am a good driver, not a great driver. I just love to go out there. For instance, if it's some of the non-officials or
Mm.
like Carburetor Cup, to regularly finish in the top 10. You know what? Hey, that's good enough for me. All right. Because I got so many other things going on. I'm never going to be the winner. And in the couple of the leagues that I ran, I think over probably 150 races across 3 different leagues over 2 years, I think I won once, but I was regularly a top 10 finisher. And that was good enough for me. Then I just outgrew the pedals. So I just upgraded
Mhm.
to I forget the name. It's a Fanatec pedal CS or something like that. It's like $400 American
Mhm.
before COVID, probably 8,000 American now after inflation. And I noticed the difference right there. I was talking to one guy who was in our league, and he's an engineer for a dirt track team. He works for General Electric of Vermont, and he pretty much goes down to Dirt Week or whatever it's called down in Florida, and he's their team engineer. And he was telling me, hey, you just got to race with what you feel comfortable with. And the other reason I don't want to change my wheel is because on the G29, I know what all the buttons do. I don't want to have to relearn them when I'm starting in a race, So
No, that's entirely fair. And
yeah.
I think, I guess by the same token, right? If you're somebody who does a lot of like drifting, for example,
Hmm.
and we put you in a Formula style cockpit, then it's going to be so alien that you probably aren't actually going to benefit from using the simulator. So if you've got
Exactly. Yeah.
something that at least relatively mimics the setup that you're in, then
Yeah.
that's more important. My oval experience, my results are pretty horrific, I guess. I don't even think I want to race on iRacing yet, but like it's some of the most fun I've had.
Yeah.
And there, it's not me worrying about is my brake pedal set correctly, is the rotation correct on the wheel. It's more like
Yeah.
the kit works. I know what, yeah, like you said, I know what these buttons are going to do. I know
Yeah.
what problems may crop up, and I'm just going to go out and have a good time. So,
Right.
not everybody wants to be the next fastest sim racer, and that is also completely okay.
Yep. And yeah, but you know what? There's a thing like when you buy a small recreational vehicle, like a little pop up camper, like we had years ago. Okay,
Mm.
what are we going to do next? Let's buy a bigger pop up. No, we ended up buying a weekend house. So, and then you get out and you start looking at them, and I'm like, well, I'd kind of like a camper again to go to Watkins Glen every year. Yeah, the only time of the year I'm going to use it, and I'm going to pull in with some $200,000 RV and look real stupid because I don't know how to drive it. In-house graphic design. What do you do there? Do you do uh, paint skins, paint themes, or what is that aspect of your business about?
Yeah, for sure. So there, we try to, as much as avoid kind of being a jack of all trades and master of none. We
Uh-huh.
do also try, obviously try to kind of cater to our clients' needs. So,
Yep.
some of our customers, they're running a simulator at a pop-up store or multiple stores. And they want not only the simulator to be branded, but also like the in-game livery. So we offer
Okay.
that kind of service there. And then kind of like I was alluding to earlier with people like Samantha Tan, they're wanting to use those broadcasts as a case study to take to brands and potential partners to say, hey, buy into this. So, we can create custom overlays and, all the thumbnails and all the stuff that, yourself comes
Right.
from broadcasting. So,
Cool.
if we can do it in-house, it's the same level of quality as our broadcast. We don't have to wait for lead times. And we can then kind of, again, just tune stuff really down to the final details of what people need and just make sure that everyone's happy.
Well, let me ask you a question. You said you started this about a year ago. How did you manage to get so much different departments or services in a year? Who helped you out with that?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, we've got a team now of over 70 freelancers, and some of those
Okay.
guys are more regular than others. But I use a guy called Mike Yao and Steve Predley, who are very, very good broadcasters within the space. And so for them, it was like as they came on board to help with work, we started to learn. I started to learn from them really. What actually is going on within a sim racing broadcast and what kind of graphics you need to be built.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that did our original logo for the company, he was a livery designer at Alpine. And then the guy who kind of then stepped in to take over his place is now at Alpine. So we're losing all our livery designers to the F1 team, which is always cool. But you kind of learn, I guess, more so from what your clients need. I'm a firm believer in like we need to be specialists within sim racing. So if a client comes to us with a sim racing need, if I don't know the answer, I'll tell them I don't know the answer, but I'll go and find a way to solve it. And then that's when you start seeing, we want to run an event with broadcasting and stewarding and this kind of stuff. So,
cool. Okay.
We're by no means massive, but we're getting there, which is important.
So 70 freelancers around the world. How many full-time in-house?
Yeah, for sure. So we've got probably about 4 to 5 people who are on sort of what I'd maybe consider part-time contracts. In terms of full-time, I jumped in to take the company on full-time about a month ago. So I gave it kind of a year to kind of grow and see if it was viable. And now work full-time on the business.
Good for you.
Obviously, like I said at the start, want to make sure that as many people have a touch point with sim racing as a job as possible, even if that's spending a month or two of our company doing some work and going somewhere else. At least then they've had the opportunity and they can see what it's like, right?
Got it. In-race photography, how does that differ from just using the cameras that are on iRacing and such like that? I know there's a small niche market out there called simtography. Tell me about your aspect on that.
Oh, Matt, well, look, my skill with a camera is extremely poor. In fact, it would probably make you cringe. But I've got a guy called DJ who does some really good photography, and again, as you know yourself, every client doesn't want just photos taken from the TV style angle. Sometimes they want stuff like from race action shots, or they want to capture a specific sponsor. So we've got a team of really, really good photographers who kind of spend sometimes hours in game just getting the perfect camera shot, getting the lighting right. Giving that to these guys to use for their socials or for their promotional activities, whatever that may be. So cinematography is so cool. I don't know what your exposure has been to it, but I think it's such a cool niche that's kind of grown up really.
So like on iRacing for cinematography, you would have to basically use their shots and stuff like that, right? And just get the right angle. So let's say if you had someone wants you to do a whole package for them, I'm sure they have a shot list, get this sponsor, get this side of my car, get me in the pits, get my pit crew. Like, is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. And then the guys go in, they tweak the camera angles, they use, whether it's Photoshop or whatever they use for their editing on top. And then usually we say to your client or our client, sorry, like, here's a bundle of 30 kind of stock photos from in-game, how do you want us to tweak these? Or sometimes we'll just say, here's your shot list, here's everything that you need, and let us know if you need more.
So, okay, so you could basically, like you said, you tweak the shots or tweak the cameras on iRacing, edit them in Photoshop, and then you could go into Adobe and drop them into a marketing piece like that.
Yeah, exactly. I guess, when you look at it that way, we're not doing anything, we're not changing the wheel. Like, these are all, anyone can jump into iRacing and take photos. It's just that, we're now starting to bundle this in a way that a brand who doesn't know sim racing can at least understand that it's an option that can be offered. And, then we start to pull into the sim racing talent to kind of, deliver that product, which is always cool.
Gotcha. Events scoring? How does that work? Do you develop scoring programs for major events, or are you like the official stats for a major event?
Yeah, so that's more so for like our live event stuff. So the idea
Mm-hmm.
that if a client has a simulator app, an activation of a, I don't know, let's just say it's a car event like SEMA or something like that. You can register to take part on the simulator. There's like a leaderboard with tracking with scores.
Oh,
Client
cool.
can use that for data capture, and we kind of handled that all our side as well. So that way they've got a turnkey solution to start with.
Okay. One thing we were trying with Joe Sixpack Racing was putting together a racing team, but we had our admins. One of them was in Ireland, another was in Vermont, and the two of us were here in New York, and we'd never quite got that together. Driver and team management. Go into that a little bit and tell me what that's all about and some of the teams you've worked with and how successful they've been.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think there, again, the way to look at it is more of like, you've got a brand that's coming into a space. They maybe don't want to, build, maybe they don't want to just chuck their name on another racing team. They kind of want to build their own. So,
Mm-hmm.
a service that we can offer there is, we will help, source talent to take part in the team. We'll find, a driver manager, engineers, this kind of stuff.
Oh,
And
wow.
then in turn that, it could be, I don't know, like Doritos Racing, for example. So that way Doritos has got their own sim racing brand,
Yeah.
rather than kind of like, building teams ourselves and then trying to sell those. It kind of works the other way around. So,
Got it. Okay.
again, nothing too radical, but
Yeah.
just, packaging it in a way that brands who don't understand sim racing can at least go, okay, this is how a team works. This is the costs involved. And again, whether they go with us or they go with a different team, at least then they've had the kind of exposure, and kind of seen what they do. Because again, Samantha Tan Racing, up and coming esports team doing a lot of stuff. And it's sometimes, for them, they need a bit of guidance on how to build their team so it's marketable, just in the same way that brands need to understand what they can market, if that makes sense.
Got it. So if Joe Six Pack Podcast came to you and said, "Hey, I know how to do a podcast. I don't know how to run a team, but I want to have a team because I got a big ego, and I want to see my name in print and on esports." So that's what you would do.
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
that's a pretty damn good example. Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
All right. So how do I get to the $300,000 first prize? Lots of money.
Exactly.
Got it.
And I
Okay.
was just going to touch on that. That's where
Sure.
obviously having that kind of time that I spent at SimGrid and Coach Dave Academy and stuff
Yep.
is, we can pull in resources there so we can, offer, potentially offer coaching, for example, and that kind of stuff. We've also got
Got it.
contacts
Okay.
with, Playseed and Frostmaster and Fanatec, and it kind of all bundles together where we're helping our customers and, these brands are helping us,
Yep.
and it just builds the ecosystem for everybody to have success, which is what's so important in the space.
Got it. Is esports still small enough where there's not like some of the major sports leagues or major record labels, for music, that it's like the old boy network, and you could be the best producer of songs in the world, but if you don't know the right people, you can't get in. Is e-racing still small enough where um, they're looking for people to come in and it's not a closed system? How open is it to reach for the top? Let's say you wanted to call up Coca-Cola and say, hey, I've got a team that wants to race, we want to sponsor you. Is it still pretty viable?
Oh man, that's such a good question. And to be honest, I think personally it is still kind of in that space. I don't think it's. I think we've come some way from that, and I think now if you were kind of wanting to get in touch with various brands, they'd at least know what esports or sim racing is.
Right.
But it's still very much, I feel, in some ways, a case of like, brand A speaks to person B and says, okay, who do you know that can do this, this, and this? Which,
Okay.
It'll change over time. Hopefully as the space gets bigger, like sim stuff, we're not in a position, nor would we ever be, to service every single brand that came into sim racing.
Sure.
But for us, it's important that brands at least look this way, because then the pie can be shared between everybody. So, I mean, what's your opinion? Do you feel it's still very much a closed circle?
No, I think it's pretty wide open for people. It's like I said, it's not like the record industry. Like, okay, everybody in country music says you got to go to Nashville, and then they go to Nashville and they say they get very lonely because it's an old boy network of all the big, whatever the big stable of music or country music writers and record labels, and you could be the best guitar player in town, but they don't want to talk to you. So what little I know about the esports industry, but what I know about how iRacing goes to market, they're pretty much saying, more like open source software type of thing, as opposed to, you got to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody else who might know somebody at Microsoft to get your program in, type of thing. So if that's the case, where it's still in its infancy and small enough where, yeah, all you need to do is just call up somebody and say, hey, I can do this. As it grows bigger, would you like to see the industry develop where it stays open for new talent to come in, instead of being, closed in, more F1 racing as opposed to your local dirt track?
You're asking so many good questions. Like tonight is like one of those nights where it's like reviewing kind of why I set up SimStep and why the business exists. Like I love the questions, man. But
Cool.
I think, to be honest, as I kind of said earlier a little bit, but just kind of come back to it, is for me, when you look at the top level leagues, like I don't know, like the iRacing NASCAR league that you kind of alluded to earlier,
Yeah.
versus that small league, which is not even spending money on broadcasting. It's just a group of guys getting together and
Sure.
racing.
Yeah.
There is so much value in both of those markets for people, and so you may get a brand like Coca-Cola, who very specifically wants to come in and target the big high level profile stuff.
Right.
But by the same token, you may then get Pepsi come in and go, okay, we understand that sim racing has got young kids that are involved. We want to target a group of people that are, I don't know, 16 to 18. Sure. Or I even saw a racing league the other week that was marketed specifically to over 50s. And
that would be me.
You then look at what brands would want to associate with that, and it's just crazy. So for me, the long-term vision is that, hopefully as Tim staff, we're able to get more rigs into people's houses and get them racing.
Yep.
But then also for the wider market, it's just people are able to go racing, able to take part in leagues, and the values there for everybody to kind of, not only take a career full time as a driver, but as a steward, or as a broadcaster, or as a league host.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of those over 50 guys. I just turned 60 in March, and I'm finding most. I mean, of course, there's Saturday mornings. It's like the Cartoon Network. You get on, and it's like Looney Tunes. It's hard to drive, but a lot of them, you get in there and you get a certain bunch of guys, like older guys, like my age, 45 and up. They will do the hosted races, or they will do Carburetor Cup, but they will do it at like 9 o'clock at night Eastern time, when a lot of the younger kids are either in homework or have already gone to bed, and the market's there. And then you'll get other times, like late at night, like after midnight, is when a lot of the Australians come on, and it's a whole different world when you're racing at 3 o'clock in the morning with people in New Zealand and Australia. And it's like, and the vibe is cool. They love to talk to you. It's great. But you're like, wow, this is completely different than the guys in the Northeast or the Northwest, or over, in Europe, the times that they race. So yeah, definitely be the over 50s league, and I could see it right now. Eyeglasses, hearing aids, and incontinence devices. Yeah, that would all over the cars. That would be the. And I tell you,
but I think. I was just going to say, just the last thing on that is, like, the beauty of sim racing is that you can throw up a 24-hour race at relatively low cost, and you can then have a team where there's like, if, for example, you and me form a team, and so like, from my time, from sort of 2 till 5, in the afternoon, I'm racing because that's optimum for me. And then as it starts to get to nighttime for me, you can jump in the car because it's daytime for you. And we have this beautiful way in which we can bring markets literally on a global scale together and just have a good time, and not have to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds shipping kit around the world, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. My son was doing the 24 hours of Daytona or Sebring last year, and everybody else on his team was from the other part of the world, and they could not find anybody to race from my time, like 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., because that was, past somebody else's time over there, or somewhere else. It's after midnight and they're all in bed. So he raced that, and it was pretty cool. So yeah, like you said, it's just easy to throw up a 24-hour race. And that jogged my memory for a minute. One of the guests I had on last year, he was the tire changer for Zane Smith in the NASCAR Truck Series, and they had the 24 hours of Daytona. But what they did is they ran a race called the 24 Beers of Daytona. It was a 24-hour race, and you had to have at least 2. I think they had 3 drivers on the team, minimum 2. You couldn't do it by yourself. And they looked at it and says, like you talk about broadcasting a small race and the expense. They said, we can't afford anybody to do the whole race. So what they did is they brought in one of the big iRacing broadcasters to cover 90 minutes before the race and the first hour or so. And then they went and just live streamed it on Twitch. And then they had the same company come back in and pick up the last 90 minutes of the race and do, the winner circle and stuff. But one of the things you had to do is every hour you had to post a picture on their Discord, empty beer bottles. And you had to, and you had to, I think it was, what they do? If you had to do 24 beers in 24 hours at least, or else I think they had a 2 case minimum, which would have been 48. So basically, each driver, while they were racing during their shift, had to consume at least 3 beers. And before you changed drivers, you had to prove to them, they had somebody watching, that you actually drank the beers.
But that's, I mean, the amount of crashes that must happen in that race, but also
Yeah.
That's the other point, which is that not everybody, like we've both said, not everybody's sim racing to become the next best racer, and equally, some of the inquiries we get for broadcasting aren't for high level intense leagues. It's for people who are literally just trying to create memories and kind of have something to look back on, and that is the perfect example, I guess, there of like these guys of why they did that. So no, that's awesome. That's like it always amazes me hearing stories like this, because sim racing is so diverse. You can do so much, and hopefully just keeps growing and growing, right?
I've got somebody on the chat. Boda86, if you could rephrase your question, it says, does Josh know OW Digital Motorsports? I don't quite understand what he's saying there. So Boda86, if you're still out there, the question, does Josh know Digital Motorsports? Is that a team, manufacturer, something like that? Because it doesn't quite come across on my end.
I think, I'll hopefully that they come back and kind of clarify. I know there's Digital Motorsport, who are like a sim racing distributor, I guess, so you can buy sim racing equipment from them. I think they host sim racing and stuff as well. I'm assuming that's who it is. But
yes, Digital Motorsports.
Be sure to kind of drop back in chat and let us know.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I think that's what it is, because then his next comment was no difference in equipment, whether he means between somebody else or Fanatec or who. So Boda86, if you're still out there, just to repost that question, we'll get the answer right back to you there. Talent management. How does that cover all aspects of racing? Like you said, from engineers to broadcasters to teams, and how does that work?
Yeah, for sure. So, some of our clients, broadcasting is probably the best example of where we provide talent. Be that hosts or commentators or on-screen personalities. But then some of our other clients, for example, they need help on like building like setups for leaks and stuff. So there we have like guys who do real life engineering, and also quite a bit of sim engineering, who kind of come in board to help define setup parameters and give them data and that kind of stuff. So in that regard, that's kind of where the talent management comes in. And, we're obviously, as we continue to grow our portfolio and services, we're able to kind of reach out to bigger and better talent. And, we're kind of hoping to start bringing in maybe some real world racing names in terms of commentary that people maybe recognize to kind of their sim racing world, and vice versa.
Cool. Just want to jump in and say this is the Joe Sixpack Racing Podcast. Our guest today is Josh Martin. He's across the pond in London, England. And we're thanking him for being here today. And he is the owner of SimStaff, which is basically all services in e-racing and esports, from management to they'll even help you build a rig or buy a rig, teach you how to race, and just get you going. Photography, on-site support, training guides, broadcasting, the whole 9 yards. Josh, if somebody's interested, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best place is probably the website simstaff.net. On there, we have a careers board where you can fire across your CV. You can see our portfolio and services, and you can obviously reach out on social media and that kind of stuff as well. But just the website is usually the best place to go, to be fair.
And on the job board for careers, what type of help are you looking for right now? What's something you really need desperately for your staff?
Yeah, for sure. So the nature of our type of business is, we're constantly recruiting, because whenever our client says to us, "Hey, have you got staff in such and such a country?" For me, it's important to turn around and say, "Yeah, we do. Here's 5-10 people to choose from." So whether you are someone who has a passion for like broadcasting, we've got broadcasting positions. If you're a commentator, we can do commentary. If you have a passion for like fixing sim equipment or building setups, we've got event managers and technicians, and even the photography that you kind of alluded to before as well. We've got people there, so constantly recruiting. We've got a good volume of work coming in at the moment, and yeah, the wider the net we can cast and the further we can capture people who love sim racing, the better for us.
Cool. Now, is it true that all these jobs you're looking for are remote only? Is that what it says here on the job board?
Yeah, so it's kind of a weird mix. A lot of our broadcasting is fully remote, people doing it from home. Sometimes we have on-site activations for live events, but the beauty of how the company kind of works is that you can obviously pick and choose what jobs you take, and some of them, you can choose whether you want to work at home, whether you want to travel, that kind of stuff as well.
Two positions here: sim racing event manager and esports project manager. What's the difference between those two positions?
That's a good question. So really, with our sim racing event managers, this is someone who's got like a real aptitude for customer service, someone who knows like, if a Fanatec wheel, for example, breaks, how to repair it in terms of like driver updates or, replacing their equipment. Kind of like the captain on site, really just making sure that our events run smoothly, being there to deal with any client inquiries, that kind of stuff. Our esports project managers is more for like the wider, longer term projects that we're working on. So there is people who are maybe project managers by trades, or someone who understands what it means to take a broadcast from conceptualization through to delivery. And again, sim racing knowledge always been kind of that main sort of defining characteristic.
Yep. And pay for these jobs. You don't have to tell me how much they pay per hour, or the job like that, unless you want to. But how do you get paid?
Yeah, so for production, for broadcasting, we pay an hourly rate. We pay, from what I can see of the market, quite a high level. Because obviously we want to make sure that we're A, rewarding people for their time, but B, attracting the best talents. And then if you do like the on-site stuff, then we pay day rates. And obviously, if you're staying overnight or if you're flying, we kind of cover your hotels and flights and that kind of stuff as well.
Cool. So is it a simulator flight and you stay in a virtual hotel? Or a real?
Yeah, maybe onto something there. A bit of Euro Truck Simulator with some flight simulator and some racing simulators.
Yeah, my wife, she'll watch the NASCAR races with me. She doesn't understand virtual reality and what the metaverse is. And I said, well, think of it this way. So the game Wii, where you put on the glasses and you can play tennis, like that. And I said, just picture the metaverse as putting on these virtual reality glasses or whatever, and instead of driving to the mall, you could just walk around your house, and as you turn right, there's your favorite store, and you can walk in, and let's say they still had record albums or stuff like that. You could literally shuffle through them. She goes, how do you feel? And I said, they're working on gloves where you reach down and you grab that virtual item in front of you, and through, I don't know what it's called, I don't know, but it says basically you could just reach down and pet a virtual dog, and you can feel the dog on your skin. And she says, you're kidding. I said, no, think about it. You want to go, you order clothes online and then you got to send them back. I said, here, you could literally try on a shirt is what they're coming to. And it would feel like that. And I says, they're working on the same thing with cars, with basically virtual test drives with cars. And she says, are you kidding? I said, yeah. And the next thing they want to do is if you come home and you're in a bad mood and your favorite place is the beach, it's going to be your walls are all going to, and your ceiling and your floor, you just say, Siri, take me to the beach. And then your whole room is going to be a beach. So that I think is where it's headed. She's like, wow, that's kind of crazy. I go, yeah, it is kind of cool. Cheap vacation. If I want to go skiing in the living room, you can go to the beach in the dining room.
I think I saw a video on TikTok of all places, and it was a guy who was in Assetto Corsa on like a free roam server, virtual reality headset on, and he was changing the in-game radio in his car, which was linked to his actual Spotify.
Wow.
So he was driving around listening to his Spotify, but not just like opening the app, but like literally changing it with the in-car radio. Which,
that's where it's going.
For me, blew my mind.
And then the ultimate thing is you're not even going to need the glasses anymore because it's going to be 3D immersion. Like it's going to be, all around you. 360 degrees.
It's going to be really interesting. And this is the thing about sim racing, right? Is it's like, for me, it's the easiest concept to explain to people in terms of what, like, I guess gaming in general is, because, everyone's either been in a car or drives a car. So you can understand the fundamentals.
Right.
And, it doesn't really matter what car you're driving or where you're driving it. People understand the gas, the brake, how to turn. So it's a really exciting time to be in the space.
Yeah. What is SimPanel? I just found that on here.
Yeah, so SimPal is the kind of how would I describe it? Yeah, it's like the service we provide in terms of like turnkey simulator builds and consultations.
Okay.
And that's like what SimPal is. So the
Got
idea is
it.
like literally keep it simple, but SimPal because it's your friend.
Yep.
And on there it's like you can book either a free consultation because you want build advice. Maybe you need troubleshooting support. You can book time with one of our technicians. Maybe
Okay.
you need someone on site to help build a simulator or debuild one. You can do all that from here. Our servicing technicians that are on site helping like our high level clients.
Yep.
And the idea is really, just keeps you from being stuck in the pit lane and lets you out on track driving as much as possible.
Gotcha. And your client portal, so if I'm a customer of yours and I'm contacting 5 or 6 of your different services, it's all coordinated right there, and I can go into my client portal and check on the status of each department I'm working with?
Yeah, exactly. I took that kind of concept from Uber, right? Because, as people often say, if you go back before Uber, you'd phone to book a taxi, you wouldn't know when it was arriving,
Right.
how far away it was. So you're always kind of hanging around at the door waiting for it to turn up. Uber kind of changed the game by giving you a tracker of your taxi so you can at least sit and have another beer and then go out into the taxi because you knew where it was. So
there you go.
With us, like it shouldn't be guesswork when your sim racing technician's on his way. You should be able to see that. You should be able to see the billing, all that kind of stuff in one central place.
Right. So it makes it nice and easy. That sounds great. Let's jump back to before you started all this. How did you get involved in racing? What piqued your interest to say, hey, I want to watch this race? And have you ever driven in a real race in real life?
Yeah, so for me, I grew up watching Formula One, like a lot of people, I guess, in Europe probably did. And I love the sport, the fact that these guys were literally pushing on the limit, in what looked like spaceships at the time, really.
Oh yeah, they still do.
And got to the point, where I wanted to go racing, couldn't afford it, so sim racing was the next best thing, and just kind of jumped in head first to try and be able to race casually and then eventually competitively, and so on and so forth.
Gotcha. And your favorite favorite car?
Oh man, that is a really good question. I think favorite. Oh man, what's yours? That'll give me some time.
I've always loved Corvettes as far as car, but my favorite vehicle would have been the custom vans of the 1970s before they came out with the factory conversion vans. There were literally places, you still can go to a place and get like a customized stereo, speakers where you want and get this and all that. Well, back in the 60s and 70s, there were places that would go and completely take a delivery van and turn it into any type of thing that you wanted. We called it gorilla fur back then. It wasn't shaggy carpet; it was long, hairy carpet, and fake vinyl if you wanted that look. And they would put little fireplaces in it. They could do the interior as a pirate ship or a cheap lady of the night house if you wanted, and then instead of vinyl wraps, everything was airbrush paint on the outside. That was my absolute favorite. But as far as a car, it would be a Corvette, and I don't care which one.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a great show. I think for me, I think a Ferrari, right? It's always as a kid growing up. It's one of those cars that just stands out to you. So for me, I think that's probably the train I'd have to go down. As an F1 team, they're not doing great, but as a sports car, definitely a fan of those for sure.
If you can afford to keep them take them to the garage every week because they're a little temperamental. I know.
That's
there's
true.
a friend of mine on to show you that you can make a lot of money in the garden center business, and some people say you can't. He's down in Houston. He retired. He bought a Ferrari. Absolutely loved the car, but he said it's so temperamental. You got to take it in and have it fixed all the time. And I said, well, that's what they call a pit stop in real racing. So he got rid of that and bought a Porsche. And he said instead of taking it to the garage every 6 weeks, it's only every 10 weeks. So he's a little bit ahead of the game there.
Fair enough. Can't argue with that.
Oh, SRO Sports, you were represented by Bentley. What does Bentley, the luxury car, have to do with esports?
Oh man, yeah. So that was I don't know about you, but I found with like COVID and stuff, my whole timeline just went out the window.
Oh yeah.
But when SRO Esports kicked off, I think it was in 2020. They obviously, GT World Challenge in Europe was still going on, and then the manufacturers were looking for kind of virtual representation and stuff. So the guys at Kunos put me in touch with the people at Bentley, and then for that esports series, I represented Bentley through one of their customer teams, Team Parker Racing, and represented them there in the ACC Championship for the 6 or 7 rounds that was going on, which was really cool opportunity. I don't live too far from the Bentley factory, so it was kind of cool representing a local brand, so to speak.
Cool.
And it was just really a cool experience learning to kind of represent an organization which has regular social media activations and branding and that kind of stuff as well.
Cool. Is Bentley or was or ever were they the upscale Rolls Royce? Were they ever one company? Because I always thought Bentley was like, yeah, you could buy a Rolls, but if you want the real one, you buy a Bentley. Were they ever?
I think to be honest, that's probably not too far from the truth.
Okay.
Obviously when they were racing, Bentley were very, very successful, and the cars look and sound great. Obviously they're not racing too much anymore in Europe, but I would say that's a fair sentiment that you've shared there.
Cool. Yeah, and I mentioned the Mazda Miata earlier because part of our year-end meeting over at Lime Rock and some of the new perks they're given to everybody over there is we get to go out, and I've driven Lime Rock in my own personal vehicle, which is a truck. It's a pickup truck, so not going to go too fast around those corners in a 4-wheel drive pickup truck. But they're letting us take out their Mazda Miatas on the track on October 29th. We get 4 hours of track time that day, and I'm looking forward to that.
That's awesome. Yep. That's awesome.
Yeah. The only time I've ever gone on a track, at racing speed, was IMSA at Watkins Glen a couple of years ago. We drove up for the day, and we already had tickets, but WeatherTech had a contest on Facebook, and basically you got to go to their hospitality tent and hang out with all the teams and the drivers and other people that make tons of much more money than I do, and I had no business being there in the first place, but we won. And I won a trip around Watkins Glen and the boot, not just in a pace car, but the new Toyota Supra.
Oh, nice.
And the guy was so cool that was driving. He was doing like a narration of it. And he goes, okay, we're pulling out of pit road. Well, we started at the beginning of pit road on the track because pit road is already filled up with the IMSA cars for later on. And we get to turn 1 and we're already doing 120 miles per hour then. Then we climbed up the S's and going down what I call the first backstretch. It's not really a backstretch, but it's a straightaway after the S's to the first chicane. And he says, okay, what are we doing now? And if we come in, here's what he's saying is we're coming to the chicane and we're doing 147. Whoa, we're in the chicane. We're doing 90. And the G-force to go around that chicane was like amazing. I was laughing my head. I wasn't scared. I was laughing the whole time because it was just so incredible to go from 147 miles an hour to 90 miles an hour in what felt like about a second and a half.
I guess the thing, right, because you've probably done so many laps of the circuit in the sim, like you're almost kind of expecting what he should be doing and just going for it, man.
Yeah, but
that's awesome.
The difference between my sim, which all I have for road feel is a butt kicker. It's not a motion simulator, but the butt kicker, I'll never race without another one. I kind of knew what was going to happen, but the actual feeling, the G-force was like totally insane. That was a lot of fun. So anyway, we've been on for an hour and a half already. So I told you to save at least an hour. So anyway, this has been the Joe Sixpack Racing Podcast. The guest today, Josh Martin from London, England. All kinds of great stuff with sim staff there. So Josh, when we wrap this up, why don't you give us again, tell us who you are, what you do, briefly, how does somebody get in touch with you, and maybe a big project that you can speak about that you've got coming up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on tonight. I really appreciate it. But
sure.
So my name's Josh Martin. I'm the founder and CEO at SimStaff. We're doing some really exciting stuff in the sim racing space, offering not only careers to anyone who wants to work in sim racing, but if you're needing broadcasting, simulators, stewarding, you name it, you can come to us and we'll support you. We've got some really cool clients and some projects in the work. Just trying to make sim racing more accessible for everybody, from sim racers to broadcasters and everybody in between.
Great. And how do they get in touch with you?
So just check us out at simstaff.net. We've obviously, SimStaff on all your normal social media channels. And obviously, yeah, if you've been listening to this podcast, you can find out more by listening to this wonderful show.
Great. Well, Josh, this has been amazing. I saw when you said SimStaff, and I have always loved promoting. Like you said, I used to do like special once a month races on iRacing, just like $100, but I would make it seem like it would be the Indy 500 and go all the different stuff. And I love that aspect, and I love broadcasting, and I've loved the whole e-racing thing is great because I certainly can't afford to race anything beyond a slot car. And some of these people spend on go-karts around here a year, $12,000 to $15,000 to run those. I will happily stay on e-racing and such. So again, I want to thank you for stopping by, and definitely hit on one of my favorite aspects of being a media junkie like I am. And by the way, I listen to LBC radio quite a bit, London Broadcasting, because I'm a talk radio junkie. So I listen to them quite a bit, and those guys are amazing to listen to. The humor when they were riling on one of your mayors a few years ago, calling him Bozo the Clown. Was that his nickname? And the guys were great. I mean, the sarcasm and the satire, if they tried that over here, I mean, Howard Stern was what people do over here, but he's so over the top he gets away with it. Anybody else would have been thrown off the air, but those guys in LBC are great. So again, you hit on the aspect of media and broadcasting promotions that I love. So I was really looking forward to having you on, and time flew by, and maybe we can check up again in a few months and see what's going on, and have you come back on.
100%. Thank you so much again.
Okay. Once again, Josh Martin over there across the pond in London, England from simstaff.net. And if you're looking for sim racing management, design, equipment, broadcasting, cinematography, training, a review of equipment, send them a list of what you want to buy and said, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And it'll take you pretty much, it sounds like an Amazon of e-racing, one-stop shop where you can get everything. And again, that's over there across the pond, SimStaff. You can reach them online at simstaff.net. They're on Facebook. They're on all the major platforms, social media platforms as well. Joe Sixpack Podcast once again says thank you to Josh Martin. Check us out on Anchor.fm, Spotify. We'll be live on Twitch for 2 weeks, uploaded to YouTube forever, and then the audio extracted and uploaded to all the major podcasting platforms. You can just find us at the Joe Sixpack Racing Podcast. You can find us on Discord, find us on Facebook. If you have any experience in racing or you just want to talk racing, give me a holler and we'll be glad to have you on the air. Joe Sixpack Racing Podcast is part of Wainwright Broadcasting, and our other podcasts are the Indoor Gardener Podcast, which I talk about indoor gardening, raising houseplants, bringing plants in, bringing them back out, starting seeds, growing herbs, legal and illegal ones, depending on where you live, lighting, fertilizing, indoor decor. Do plants clean your air or do they not clean your air? Do they make you feel better or do they not? And we talk about insect control, bug control, and everything plant related, as well as you can visit my online plant shop at theindoorgarden.etsy.com for rooted cuttings, rare tropicals, succulents, and other gardening merchandise. And our next brand new podcast coming out later today is the Curmudgeon Radio Show, where we take on everything that's bugging you, set them in their place, and then just go have a beer and talk about it again. So again, it's the Joe Sixpack Racing Podcast. You can catch us live on Twitch right now, also for the next 2 weeks, and look for audio on all the major podcast platforms in a day or so. Thanks again, Josh. Great show, and definitely good luck with simstaff.net. Goodbye.